Hello and welcome to Retro Odyssey, an odyssey into the depths of retro gaming. I'm your host Adam Miller, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Matt, Stephen, and Ryan. Before we start our topic, let's take a moment to introduce ourselves. I guess I'll start. My name's Adam, 31. I've been gaming since I was maybe about 5 or so. I used to play Zool with my older brother on the Amiga. And then later on, my uncle gave me a Master System and a Mega Drive that I played with my brother. My brother was mainly on the Mega Drive, and I played the Master System, but we played both a fair amount. The first console that I had that was truly mine was the N64. I got for my birthday after playing, like Mario 64, Bomberman 64, Lilac Wars, my friend's house, and then kind of kept up with console gaming ever since until maybe about the Xbox 360 when I got bored of modern gaming and then just started playing mainly old stuff. Right, okay, so I'll pass over to Matt. You want to introduce yourself, Matt?
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm 36. I grew up playing the Spectrum initially. We had a Spectrum in the house when I was growing up, and I had hundreds of games for that. And that was pretty much all I played until the Master System came out. I was bought a Master System and played the hell out of that. After playing on a friend's Mega Drive, I ended up getting one of them as well. And the years after that, I've been through pretty much every console at some point. I've had a SNES, Saturn, I had a Jaguar at one point, went through the N64, GameCube, all of that. I kind of dropped out of console gaming around the time of the PS2. I had a PS2, but it kind of tailed off, and I went into mainly PC gaming. And it's only in the past, say, 5 years or so that I've got back into a lot of retro gaming, and I've started rebuilding my retro gaming collection.
Nice one. Same as me. I've only started rebuilding the whole thing recently. Okay, nice one. Cheers, Matt. Stephen, you want to go next?
I'm Steven. I'm 28. I've been gaming since I was 3, and they handed me Super Mario Brothers.
Nice.
I own basically every Nintendo, Microsoft, or Sony console. I still play mostly console games to this day. Doing PC gaming for some of the older stuff that's hard to find, or some of the stuff that's only on PC. But yeah, I've been a console gamer basically the whole time. The only thing I haven't played a lot of is Sega systems.
All right, nice one. Have you played any of the Sega systems recently, or?
I have a Dreamcast and I have a Retron to play some of the Genesis games.
Yeah.
But I haven't really dealt with it much at all in the past 5 years.
Fair enough. Well, I'm sure we'll introduce you to many Sega games. You're missing out. All right, Ryan. Gonna kick off.
My name's Ryan, 28 years old. I've been gaming since I was about 4 or 5. We were strictly a Nintendo family, probably because we couldn't afford to have all the fancy Sega and Sony, and wasn't until probably that 360 that I actually got my hands on a not Nintendo console. That I owned. I had friends who had all the other consoles, and I got to play those intermittently, but mostly just all that Nintendo goodness, and played a lot of emulation and borrowed a lot of other console games over the years. And over the past couple of years, I've started building up that retro collection, been adding a few more consoles. I'm going to focus on getting my hands on a Sega collection here soon, and hopefully here I can get some good Sega games under my belt too. So it's been an adventure.
Okay, nice one. All right, well, I'll introduce our first topic, and then we'll take a brief interlude before talking about the first game. So as it's our first one, we're going to talk about all our favourite games. So these are retro games from the GameCube era or before, and which one we consider our favourite. So we'll have a quick break, and then we'll move on to our first choice. Okay, so our first game is my choice, and my favourite game is Perfect Dark for the N64. It's first-person shooter, developed and published by Rare, and it came out in 2000 in America and Europe, I think. It's a spiritual successor to GoldenEye, which obviously was really popular on the N64. There has been a remaster, which was on XBLA. I think that was in 2010. But it's also available on the Rare Replay collection for the Xbox One. Right. So a brief introduction to the story of the game. It stars Joanna Dark. She's a special agent like James Bond, but in the future, and she deals with corporate espionage. And it kicks off, and she needs to rescue this robotic AI, and from there it kind of devolves into madness, really, with aliens and conspiracies and all sorts. So what did everyone think?
I really, really enjoyed this game. I'd heard about it before from lots of different places, but it never really appealed to me, kind of from what I'd heard. But
Yeah.
I picked it up for this. I was able to pick up the cartridge quite cheap, and I really got into it, and I really enjoyed it. I liked the way it played. Once I'd gotten used to the controls, I could zip around quite fast, and even though I played it on the easier difficulty, I found it just the right amount of challenge, and like I say, it was a really fun game.
Well, that's kind of the good thing, really. There's an easy difficulty, the agent mode, but really it's not so much easy, it's just different. Because, like with GoldenEye, you've got easy, which is kind of your normal difficulty. And then it does get harder after that, but they start changing things you need to do in the levels. You've got additional objectives and you go to different places, which kind of makes it a different experience for all the difficulty. So did everyone play on the agent difficulty, or did anyone try tackling special agent?
I did mostly agent. I tried special agent at first just to see what all I'd be getting into.
Yeah. And was it too difficult, or?
It's not that it was too difficult. It's just I could kind of tell I wasn't going to get through a lot on that difficulty in the short amount of time I had.
Yeah,
so,
true.
My intention is to go back and replay this and go through the whole thing on the different difficulties.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it.
Likewise, I also played it on the agent difficulty. I tried a special agent, but considering the level, the objectives can occasionally be a little obtuse, you know what you're supposed to do, but you have no idea where it is or exactly how to do it. Adding more objectives on top of that, I felt was not a good way to play the game the first time. So I backed off to agent really quickly.
I mean, obviously, it's a game that I've played countless times, so I know the objectives like the back of my hand, really. But I can understand how it can be quite obtuse. But I think that's it was one of the design things they did with GoldenEye as well. They wanted to create these wide open areas to create realistic levels and realistic buildings and locations, and then stick the objectives on top of that. So you're not following a linear path. That's why you've got rooms or corridors that don't really lead anywhere, and they don't even lead anywhere on different difficulties. I mean, there's some areas, on Villa, for example, where you'll see the front of the villa, and there's a big open garden area, but you don't ever have to go there. It's just there.
I kind of found myself having to check a guide for quite a lot of the quite a lot of the missions. I mean, the open areas do create a sense of scale, but it does add to the confusion quite a lot. That was my one major gripe with the game. Often the objective is quite simple. It'll say do this thing, but as has been mentioned, you don't know how to do that thing. You don't know where you need to go to do that thing.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing is with, a few of the objectives, you can do it in different ways. Like one example, which I always find, really good is on the rescue level. Because, where you've got to escort that little crate to the weak point of the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Did everyone do it that way? Did you move the crate around and move it in all the elevators?
I used a dragon gun
Yeah, yeah.
actually, and set it to proximity explode.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's like the other way of doing it is, you can use the
I'm trying
Phoenix.
to remember what I did for thing I blew it up to.
Yeah, because you can blow it up in different ways. Because obviously you've got the dragon, which is the gun you get from the guys,
Right.
but also on the previous level, you remember the guy that you get the key card from in the brown clothes?
Yeah.
Well, if you punch him and keep him alive, there's actually a different area of the level on rescue where he will open the door for you and you
Oh.
follow down the path and you can get, I think it's double phoenixes. Later in the game you get the alien pistol which fires explosives.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can get that weapon and obviously you can blow up the wall that way.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, I mean there's loads and loads of secrets in the game and loads of like alternate paths and alternate ways of doing things. But as you guys say, for the first time, it can take a while. Like, I do remember on some of the levels, I would just sit there for like half an hour on a level before I'd work out what I need to do.
I am actually looking at picking up the Prima guide for it. I've been keeping my eye out. I've seen it online, but I'd like to find it in the wild for a little bit cheaper if I can.
How much is the Prima guide going for?
I think it was around between like £10 and £15.
Yeah. All right, it's not too bad. But
yeah, I mean, I'm seeing on Amazon for $6 is the lowest one.
that doesn't seem
So,
too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be worth picking up. I kind of have a thing about collecting Perfect Dark merchandise. I've got the graphic novel. I've got like this challenge book that gives you like loads of different challenges and stuff to do. So I'm a bit of a fanboy when it comes to the game. But speaking of challenges as well, did anyone try getting those cheats in the game? There's some cheats you unlock by beating the level, and there's others you have to beat like time limits to get.
No, I got the ones that you complete levels for, but I didn't actually dip into the challenges.
I did
Well,
a couple
no, this
challenges.
is actually the single levels because, for
Right.
example, on the G5 building, if you beat the level in, I think it's like 2 minutes or something, then you unlock an additional cheat.
Oh, that was never going to happen with how bad I am at video games.
But it's quite an interesting little thing because it's the cheats are spread out through all the difficulties, and you have to beat a time limit for each of them. So it kind of pushes you into, learning the levels and being able to do things quite efficiently. But in addition, as well, there's cheats that you can get through the firing range. Like the little hub area in the institute.
Yeah.
You can do the firing range and you can unlock a secret level.
I actually got about halfway through the firing range. I didn't finish it up though.
Yeah, it's pretty worthwhile doing. Some of them you need to think about how to do it. But that's one of the things about this game. There's so many unlockables. I mean, single player, there's loads of cheats and everything, and multiplayer, you can unlock weapons and levels and character skins. You've got the challenges. So, did anyone try the challenges out?
I did about 3 of them, and I thought they were pretty interesting. Obviously, the first challenge that you have to do is
Just kill a guy.
just kill a guy like 7 times, and you're good to go.
Yeah, well, they kind of do different things you need to do. So, like capture the hill kind of thing, capture the case, slow motion, and they do get quite challenging. Like the final couple of challenges are notorious for being like ridiculously hard because it has like dark sims, which the best simulants in the game. Because there's actually difficulty levels for the simulants, from Meat Sim, which don't really do anything, to Perfect Sim, which are really good. And then Dark Sim is one step above that. They actually cheat. So they will actually walk through walls to get to you. So you'll be in an area and you'll be thinking, oh, there's no way this guy can get to me. And it'll pop behind you and just shoot you in the head. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it gets pretty insane.
That's I know GoldenEye, of course, this is mostly the same team at this point. GoldenEye didn't do the challenges, but they did do the cheat unlocks very similarly, where you'd have various objectives. A lot of them, I think there was one cheat for a time limit on each mission, and then there would be like, don't use a certain, or only use a certain weapon.
Yeah.
And various other accomplishments, and they carried over the challenge aspect into Time Splitters, because it was the same team who did that.
Yeah.
They migrated over with Eidos.
Time Splitters was pretty good as well.
And actually, Perfect Dark reminded me a lot of Time Splitters.
Yeah, I get that.
And I very much, it's one of my favorites. So with that in mind, I actually super enjoyed Perfect Dark, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to try and complete, maybe not everything, but I'm going to go back and try to complete most of it, because it's totally worth it.
Well, the one thing that will be difficult to complete is you actually have a character profile and you can level up. You start at rank, I don't know, like 30 or something. And then every time you reach certain checkpoints in your stats, you get closer and closer to rank 1, which is perfect. I've played the game a lot and I'm at rank 3. So, yeah, if you want like the perfect rank, yeah, you're not going to get it.
I don't
think?
Sorry, I don't think I'm going to go that extreme there.
Yeah, it's probably not worth it. So going back to the main game, what did people make of the story?
It was batshit crazy. As soon as an alien showed up, I was like, what the fuck is this? And then when you find out that he's named Elvis, like, wow.
Well, it's quite funny. There's quite a lot of backstory to it as well, because there's actually a story to Elvis where he's basically visited Earth a bunch of times and he's got into like American culture. So his nickname is really Elvis, just because of, loving Elvis the musician. And he wears that American waistcoat and everything, and it's quite interesting. And then you've got Mr. Blonde. Did anyone see that twist?
I saw it coming right before it happened. I was just like, because I killed an enemy and it was Mr. Blonde laying on the ground. I went, wait a minute, I didn't kill Mr. Blonde though. And I'm like, oh shit, he's an alien.
Yeah.
And then it came around, like literally, I think it was like 40 seconds later, I triggered the cutscene where it shows the twist.
Yeah, because I think it's the level before on the Air Force One, and there are 2 of them you have to fight.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives you a bit of an indication that this isn't just one person.
So I saw that and I thought that was I thought it was nice, because I first started off, I'm like, oh look, it's corporate espionage. This is neat. And then it just instantly spiraled out of control.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like suddenly this regular guy is a monster. He just changes into a monster.
It's quite good as well, because when you beat the game on Agent, you unlock a further mission where you can play as him. And it's infiltrating the Datatime building and abducting the director.
That was actually kind of a fun mission, because you got to use you got to use like the cloaking, and there's something else you got to use too.
The Mauler, the Skedar pistol.
They start you off with a Mauler, and they give you like 30 seconds worth of cloaking that you can blitz through like half the mission through.
Yeah. Yeah, you can get through most of it. You can use cloaking and get to pretty much Cassandra, as long as you turn off the cloaking once you're in the lift.
No, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, the bonus missions are quite interesting, because the second one you play as Elvis, and you're in Area 51. So it's before the distress beacon. So you wake up in Area 51 and you have to try and activate the distress beacon to the Carrington Institute.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think one of the best parts about this game is just the sheer amount of depth in it.
Yeah, there's loads of stuff.
And that's actually kind of unexpected for an N64 game. There was a lot more than I was anticipating for a game from that generation that wasn't an RPG.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of any other game that rivals it in terms of content. I mean, maybe GoldenEye with the cheat unlockables, but...
Maybe, but not even.
Yeah, I mean, that's only kind of like halfway there because, you've got the multiplayer side of things. Like with multiplayer as well, you've got co-op mode. And did anyone try the co-op mode?
I didn't have anybody to try it with, unfortunately.
Me neither.
Yeah, to be honest, co-op mode, it's one of those things that's nice, but you can't play it because, you might have noticed frame drops during the single player. It's like a PowerPoint presentation if you play the co-op mode.
I'm
But
interested. Go ahead.
It's got quite a nice twist as well. It's got like a counter-op mode.
Yeah, that's what I was about to mention.
Yeah.
That looks like it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I imagine that would be better on the Rare Replay because I think they sorted out, the frame rate so you could actually play it with someone theoretically and it would run all right.
Can you actually play it online with the Xbox version?
I think so. You can play the multiplayer, so I think you'll be able to play co-op.
Let me take a look.
If anybody has the Rare Replay, I wouldn't mind swapping Xbox Live names and giving that a shot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the counter-operative looked quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, my only gripe with counter-operative is when it comes to the alien missions, because you don't play as a Skedar, you play as Mr. Blonde.
Well, what's even the point then?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I kind of get why, because it's probably just more stuff to add, which, considering the amount of content in the game, they were probably already pushing the game to its limits.
Right.
But, it's still pretty neat. Because the thing is, if you die when you play as the enemy, you respawn as a different enemy. So you just keep on playing until either the protagonist dies or completes a level.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Okay, so everyone enjoyed it then, I take it?
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I'm definitely gonna put more time into it.
Yeah, me as well.
When I get the chance.
Well, the good thing is, I mean, if you want to get like the original cart, you can get it cart only for less than a tenner, and even box isn't going to cost much.
Yeah, my local shop had it for I think $7 unboxed, and then it was like $20 with the box. But I think that was a complete box.
Yeah, I mean, I own all three versions, and I think all of them cost around the 20-25 mark. So you could even get like, the full boxed version, and you aren't going to be paying much. And for the amount of content, it's definitely worth it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It was a pretty common game, so there's plenty of them on the market floating around.
Right, that's the thing.
I think the Japanese one's a bit rarer because, no pun intended, because they don't really like first-person shooters as much. But even then, I think there are quite a few copies going round. I think the only thing bumping up the price really is probably the expansion pack. Because, we didn't mention it before, but it's a game that needs the expansion pack.
Yeah, because I actually bought the cartridge and I was like, why can't I get into the campaign? And then I realised, I need to get myself an expansion pack as well. So I say the game cost me £8. I had to pay another 20 odd for an expansion pack.
But that expansion pack will pay off.
Yeah.
In the long run.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, if you're paying like a tenner for the car, I think even if you didn't have the expansion pack and you just play multiplayer, there's probably like enough to justify a tenner's worth of content there.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's definitely better with the expansion pack. Okay, so let's take another interlude for another sample of music from our next game, and we'll move on to Steve's pick, I think.
All right, so my pick was The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, which is, I'm sure, a lot of people's favorite retro game. I mean, it's, still widely regarded as one of the best games of all time. Um, I mean, and it's, it's a story everybody knows, developed by Nintendo, published by Nintendo, Shigeru Miyamoto really leading the charge on it. Same story as usual, beat Ganon, save Zelda, this time just with some extra, people to save and different places to go. And, most notable for introducing a lot of the elements that even to this day the games still use, like the Master Sword, the Two Worlds mechanic, and various items like the hook shot and all that. So, I mean, for me personally, Link to the Past is kind of, it's kind of the peak of 2D Zelda. And everything after that is, influenced in one way or another by it. So, I mean, I'm sure you guys have played it before, but, what did you think of it?
Well, like you said when you mentioned it's like the peak of 2D Zelda, I'd absolutely agree with that. It's, I mean, I've not played all the 2D Zeldas, but out of the ones I've played, Link to the Past is definitely the most engrossing, the most deep, and it's my personal favorite of all the 2D ones I've played.
Yeah, I mean, it's not my favourite, the 2D ones. I mean, I still prefer Minish Cap, but it's definitely a really good game. I mean, the good thing about A Link to the Past as well is it was the game that set the Zelda formula. Because Zelda 1 was just this sprawling adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Zelda 2 was, we'll talk about Zelda 2.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
And then it moved on to Link to the Past, where they kind of took the original game's format and then just tightened everything. And they just made it work so well. And that just continued to be the 2D format from then on. I mean, all the ones after that were effectively variations of A Link to the Past.
Yeah. I mean, Link to the Past not only established the 2D Zelda franchise for what it was that we would get games for when was it released? 90...
It was 1991.
No, I was going to say 92, 91. So for the past 20, so 2018, so 27 years we've seen. I mean, everyone has their own differences, but it's like Zelda clones. We've seen Link to the Past Zelda clones for 27 years.
Yeah.
And you can always find the roots back in A Link to the Past, whether it be with just the way dungeons are laid out or movement or puzzles, weapons. It not only identified Legend of Zelda and it gave it an identity, but it literally defined an entire genre of game.
Yeah. And I think it also, like, you look at this just from a design perspective. I mean, you had, you had that great world map. You had, the laid out path that you could take, but you didn't have to if you wanted to challenge yourself more. You had a boss that you needed an item that wasn't even in a dungeon to beat. Some dungeons didn't even give you items. Weapons. They gave you, tunics or things like that. And it's really something that we hadn't seen before, and even since, like, some of that's kind of fallen by the wayside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean the way the game's designed to, you can tackle it however you want. It's really clever how it's done. I mean, you can watch randomized runs of A Link to the Past where all the items change and the games are still possible to beat.
Yeah.
Because, you can do dungeons in completely different ways. I mean, some items just wreck dungeons and you can, walk past them, in no time. And then others, you can just do it a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the few games that was able to beat this one in terms of do it in any order you want was the sequel Link Between Worlds, because they went in saying we want to build it this way. Yeah. So, I mean, it took a concerted effort in that direction to surpass what they did here, and I think that that is important to think about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, A Link Between Worlds, I'm not too keen on the rental system, but that's a story for another time. But yeah, I get what you're saying. It is a really good game. I think there was only one dungeon that I didn't like. Was it the Skull Woods? It was the one with all the floor masters in it.
Oh yeah, that one is a lot of people have issue with that one. That dungeon does have it has some unique things to it. I mean, I found something to like in just about all of it.
Yeah.
I mean, my personal favorite gimmick that they did with a dungeon was in the Thieves Town dungeon, where you actually have to carry the final boss around with you for a while.
Yeah. And then she transforms. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really clever. That was a good gimmick.
So yeah, I mean, each dungeon has its ups and downs, and yeah, I definitely understand not being too keen on the Skull Woods, because that one can get kind of brutal.
Yeah.
Well, that and the if I remember correctly, in the Skullwoods, you complete the dungeon, like you complete the main dungeon, but in order to get to the boss room, you actually have to completely exit the dungeon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And use your fire wand to open up the door to the boss chamber.
Yeah.
And while that was very clever, it's the only time they did that in the game, and it was really easy to get lost because of that, because you didn't know you had to do that.
Yeah,
Well,
it
that
does
was
throw you for a
my
loop.
other issue with the game. Well, not that game. Sorry, that dungeon. Is that dungeon? I just got lost and didn't know where to go at all. I think I had to look up a guide to actually get past it.
Yeah, and that is admittedly an oversight there. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it was just them trying to be cute or whatever, but I can agree with that. That is a problematic element.
Yeah. But you touched on it before with the Thieves Town boss. But some of the bosses in this game are really good.
Oh yeah,
like the Helmasaur King, in particular, I quite like, and the one in Turtle Rock.
yeah,
I don't remember the name of it, but where you've got like the three heads.
yeah. And you're going to use the ice wand, the fire rod, and the sword.
Yeah, I mean the bosses in this game are really good. I think there's only one I don't like, and this you can probably guess which one it is.
Ganon?
No.
Oh.
I was gonna say the guy at the top of the Tower of Hera, because he can knock you down.
Moldor. That's the one.
Moldor, yeah.
The worm where you go up there, you get hit by it, it knocks you down. You got to climb back up.
Oh yeah.
And you start the fight over again.
Oh, that's so infuriating. Is that boss? You just go up, you get knocked down, and you have to do this thing like 50 times.
Yeah, that was
you're good at it.
That was by far my least favorite boss, like especially as a kid, because it's like I just got up here.
Yeah, because you have to beat him 2 times as well. Because you beat him in the Tower of Hera, and then you have to beat him again in Ganon's Tower.
Yes.
So when it came to facing him in Ganon's Tower, I was just like, oh my goodness, not this guy again.
Yeah.
But I think in general, I mean, in all of the Zelda games that came after it as well, the bosses are generally really well designed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're usually the high point of the game in Zelda titles.
Oh yeah. And I mean, even like not to toot the horn of Link Between Worlds, but that one you saw Blind come back, but it had the new mechanic of the shield that you had to hide on.
Yeah.
So like that is something they carried along, is that the bosses were interesting the whole way.
Well, like with a lot of the bosses as well, you'd see them in other Zelda games. Like the Land Molas, the desert, is kind of similar to the boss in Majora's Mask.
Yes.
The one in the Stone Temple Tower.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Skull Woods boss, the big moth thing, which appears in Wind Waker as a sub-boss, I think.
Yeah, I believe so.
So
You've
there's
seen
quite
King
a lot
Dodongo a couple times.
Yeah, that one appears a few times.
He's he's appeared in like 4 games at this point, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even that one with the eyeballs, he's had so many appearances.
Yeah.
You know,
He's
not
been
that
all over
boss,
the
but
place.
something that's basically been the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a pretty good game. It's definitely a game that deserves its good reputation. Although I find that those couple of elements I don't like, namely dungeon and that boss,
Hmm.
one thing. There are a couple of things which stop me from finding it to be the best Zelda game.
Hmm.
But I still think it's certainly up there as one of the best.
And that's totally fair. And honestly, one of the nice things about it being so well received at the time is how many copies they then put out there of it. Because I mean,
Yeah.
you go to the used market now. I mean, you're looking at maybe $30 for a copy of the SNES version. You can get the Game Boy version for like $20.
Well, that's the thing they did on the Game Boy as well.
Yeah.
And then it's been released on like most of the virtual consoles and
Yeah, exactly.
everywhere.
You
And
can
one
legally
thing-
acquire this quite well and quite easily.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things I loved about the Game Boy Advance version was that they added a dungeon for 4 Swords, where if you had completely finished 4 Swords, you got an extra dungeon in Link to the Past.
All right. Was the
And-
dungeon any good?
I haven't played through the dungeon itself, because I've never been able to play 4 Swords with anyone. But from what I've seen, it looked like a really good dungeon, and basically the boss of the dungeon was 4 separate rooms where you would fight the 4 different colors of Link.
Okay.
Oh, neat.
So that was, and those fights were really interesting. I've actually looked up all those, and those were really good fights.
Is it like what's his face, Dark Link from Ocarina, or is it like a different thing?
I would say it's kind of similar to that in that it has your moveset, but it also has other things it can do that you can't.
All right. Okay.
One other thing that I found like remarkable about the game as well is the music.
Mm-hmm.
It is just like throughout the music is just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
It is quite amazing how well Link to the Past not only is the music just well composed, but it's so well composed and how it sets the mood for where you're in. Like when the game opens up and you immediately tell, or your uncle says don't leave, and you instantly leave, and you go into your castle and it just has kind of, because you're entering this game and you don't know what's going on. If you've played Legend of Zelda before, you kind of know what you're gonna be doing, but you don't know how this new game is gonna progress and what you're going to encounter. And it really sets a tense mood.
Yeah.
When you're in the castle grounds.
Yeah, and I can tell you the dungeon music absolutely will get your heart rate up, because it just it's that tension and that presence.
Well,
Yes,
like the other
absolutely.
thing as well is with the music, you can pick pretty much any track from the soundtrack, and it's pretty much an iconic Zelda tune.
Yeah, I mean I
It's
can
like
tell you.
most of the iconic tunes.
Yeah, I mean I can tell you I have been humming just about all the songs from this at various times for the past 20 years.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fantastic, and I think it's really important to say that like one of the most important and telling things about Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past is that even now, if you pick it up, if you hand it to someone who wanted to play a dungeon crawler, this holds up. This has stood the test of time. A lot of retro games, you go back and you go, "Oh, I like this when I was a kid. I like this because I like this style of game."
And it plays
But
like
then but then you can go back and start picking them apart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And it's really hard to pick apart Link to the Past. Like, you can have a qualm here and there, but it was so amazingly designed.
Yeah.
And that's one of my big things with the Zelda series is everyone, worships Ocarina of Time. And, I went back and played it a few years ago, and I'm like, this doesn't hold up as well.
It
You
doesn't.
I don't.
It just, Link to the Past holds up so much better.
Visually, music, dungeon design, all of it is just, I would have to say, across the board, it is better than Ocarina of Time. And it's better than a lot of dungeon crawlers that have come out in the past, decade.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing as well, because with the dungeon crawls that have been coming out recently, there may have been a Link to the Past clones, but no one's ever really done it better.
No.
I mean, there was Blossom Tales, which came out recently for the Switch, and I think it's out on Steam.
I've heard good things about that one.
That's a really good Link to the Past clone, but it's still not as good as Link to the Past. And it's like, what, 20 years later, or however much time it's been?
Yeah. Like you said, it's, the fact that nobody's even come close to beating it.
Yeah.
Often imitated, never replicated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Personally, I do prefer, in terms of the Zelda games, I do prefer Ocarina of Time, but Link to the Past is definitely the best 2D one that I've played.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, is like, even when people disagree on things like this, we can all agree this was a good game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. Right, so I think everyone's in agreement that this one's a definite must-play.
Yeah, this one's well worth picking up, and like I said, it's very easy to find. There were so many copies made of it in both of its incarnations.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many editions of it and so many re-releases that you can probably pick it up somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I think we'll take another break, have another musical interlude for the next game, and then we'll have a look at Matt's pick.
My pick is Silent Hill 2, which was developed by Team Silent and published by Konami back in 2001. I have always been quite a big horror fan. I played through all the PS1 Resident Evil games. I played through the original Silent Hill as well. And I just loved all of them. Really, really immersed myself in survival horror as a genre. And Silent Hill 2 is actually the very first video game that I ever pre-ordered. I got the limited edition, which has got like a making of DVD on it as well.
Yeah.
And from the very first time that I played it, I just fell in love with it. It takes so many influences, like everything from David Lynch to Lovecraftian influences in there. This depiction of an American town that has just completely gone wrong, and it was at the time a really beautiful game to look at. As time's gone on, graphically it doesn't look as impressive as it used to do, but at the time that was like one of the best looking games on the PS2. And a lot of people will say the tank controls are kind of difficult to get into, but having come from playing the original game and playing all the Resident Evils, it was kind of like second nature to me at that time. So I never really had an issue with that myself. So I was able to dip into it, and I've managed to complete all 6 endings. I know the game pretty much back to front, and it is like my favorite retro game of all time. So what do you guys think?
Well, it's funny how you mentioned about it being such a great looking game, and I kind of agree with that. And it's kind of weird, really, because the limitations at the time meant that the draw distance was terrible, which is how the whole fog thing in Silent Hill was created.
Well, with that that was a limitation definitely with the first game.
Yeah.
With the second game, it was more about following an aesthetic,
a tradition. Exactly.
Yeah.
It was something that was created in the first game because of the limitations.
Yeah.
And it created what people come to think of when they think of Silent Hill. They think of this decrepit city, this decrepit town that's filled with fog and all these weird inhabitants and surroundings.
And that was the one thing I really did enjoy from what I've played of Silent Hill 2 was the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's just very creepy and mysterious as to what's going on. and then you toss in a couple horrible-looking monsters in there, and it really just seals the deal.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
Yeah.
funny because Silent Hill isn't even that much of... It's not even like a survival horror game when you look at it. It's more of a puzzle game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of an adventure puzzle game with just a really horrible atmosphere.
Well, the good thing about the Silent Hill games is you can set the puzzle difficulty and the combat difficulty, so you've got that kind of variation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really did like that.
Yeah, so that's quite a good aspect of the game that I like. One thing I love about the Silent Hill series in general, and Silent Hill 2 did fantastically, was the storyline, because it's got this town that changes depending on the person who's affected by it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So there's everything in this town, but everything relates to James. Everything is all about him, and it's his nightmare.
Even the monster designs as well. They are kind of based on his wife, and a lot of them are based on like his anxieties and stuff like that. And in terms of story, I do think it is one of the best written stories in video games. Like, full stop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in terms of atmosphere, it's full of atmosphere. Although, even though it's creepy, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a scary game.
No.
I mean, I think in terms of Silent Hill games, I always consider that Silent Hill 2 has a better story, but then Silent Hill 3 is scarier. Like, I quite like the third game for how scary it is in comparison to the other ones. But the story of 3 is a mess. Whereas 2, everything is just perfect for the tale it's telling. So even though it doesn't have the scariness of some of the other games, it doesn't need it because it gets the atmosphere just right.
Right.
I mean, even as you were saying with the controls, I kind of think maybe for people like us, who grew up in this era, it's probably not too much of an issue because, as you say, you grew up with Resident Evil and these kind of games that use tank controls.
Yeah.
But I can definitely see how people playing it today who didn't grow up with that would find it a problem. But for me, I've never had an issue because, you hold forward, you run forward, whatever direction you're facing, you press left, you turn left. I've never really had much of a problem getting my head around it, but I don't know, maybe that's just me.
It was the one thing that really ruined Silent Hill for me was tank controls, and I found it just infinitely frustrating. I found the same problem with Mega Man Legends 2 was, well, not the second one, but Mega Man Legends was you had the bumpers to turn you left and right, and it's not... I mean, maybe because my first delve into 3D games was like Mario 64, where the stick runs you around.
Yeah.
Right.
That really just didn't... It wasn't computing in my brain that was something that needed to be done.
Now, one thing I wanted to ask you guys, did the PS2 have different control options? Because on the Xbox version, you have 3D controls and 2D controls.
Yes, I believe it did.
Okay. Because when I switched it from the 3D to the 2D controls, that was the more traditional, the stick controls everywhere, as opposed to the having to turn and all that.
I think that might have been something for the Xbox version. I mean, I played the PC version of Silent Hill 2, and obviously that you can map your controls.
Right.
But it was still a tank control type movement where you kind of move using A and D to turn, and then W and S to move forward and backwards.
Right. I know, because I know the Xbox version does have, some more stuff in there.
Yeah, there's an extra story mission kind of called Restless Dreams, where you play as Maria.
Yeah.
All right. But from what I gather, the Xbox version has other issues which counteract that.
To be honest, I have both, and the Xbox version is just as playable for me personally. Although,
is the Xbox version the HD one, or is that completely different to what I'm thinking of?
that's completely different. The HD version was released on 360, but the
Yeah.
original was released on the original Xbox.
I thought when you said Xbox, you meant the 360 version.
Oh no. The only thing that the PS2 version has over the Xbox version for me is just I find the PS2 controller more comfortable than the Xbox one.
Yeah, and that's that's down to personal preference.
But I mean, we touched a little bit on the HD version there. This is a great example of how not to do a HD version, because they up the graphical fidelity a little bit, which is great, brilliant. But they didn't have all of the code, so they weren't able to find some of the textures, which is why the main sign for Silent Hill is now in Comic Sans in the in the HD version. For some reason, they replaced all of the voice acting, and the voice acting was perfect in the original, and they replaced all of that, and also they decided to remove the fog, which kind of kills the atmosphere. But they removed the fog, but they didn't increase the draw distance. So
it looks worse.
So you would see the pop in.
Yeah, on the HD version, you can see the edge of the world constantly, which is normally hidden by the fog, and it just doesn't work. Does not work at all. I mean, if you're going to play Silent Hill 2, play it on the PS2 or the original Xbox. Do not spend money on that HD collection.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one thing I was going to say, one thing I really loved about the game is the map, because you've got your normal map, but then as you find dead ends, you'll get little scribble marks to indicate that. And a locked door is just a line, but not a scribble, to indicate that you can open it at some point.
It has a certain charm to it, doesn't it?
I thought that was brilliant.
Honestly, I have a relatively I have a mixed opinion of the game, but that definitely was one of the nice, well thought out features of the game, was a nice functional map, because maps around that time could be kind of funky in a lot of games.
It was kind of hit or miss.
Yeah, and this was very logical and very useful.
Yeah, I mean, even down to, like in the beginning when you're in the apartment, you go into an apartment and then you get the rooms for that apartment. And, if you've got a puzzle item, it's on the map.
Yeah.
So did any of you actually complete the game right to the end?
I wasn't able to get all the way through it.
This time I didn't get all the way through, but I have been it all before.
I was only able to tolerate so much of the tank controls because I played the HD version. Sorry, guys. But the tank controls I have a really hard time tolerating them unless I'm playing tanks.
Mm-hmm.
And the 3D controls, while they feel natural because it's a semi-isometric view, fixed cameras,
mm-hmm.
When you enter a room, if the camera angle shifts, then suddenly you can just turn right around and run into the neck, or run right back into the room you were in.
Yeah.
Or run into a wall, or sometimes you're going to be running into a hall that has a monster in it, and suddenly you get hung up on the monster because the camera angle changed.
Right.
So I've gotten far more enjoyment out of watching my wife play, because Silent Hill 2 is one of her favorite games of all times. I've gotten so much more enjoyment just basically co-piloting with the map, with a map guide on my end and figuring out puzzles with her.
Yeah.
I appreciate the game for what it is, but for some reason, I just have a really hard time playing it.
I would say for anyone who isn't able to complete it on its own for whatever reason, do watch a playthrough of it, because it's got one of the best. The kind of reveal in the hotel is beautifully done. And the story is so good that even if you're not going to play the game, it's worth it to experience the story. And there are 6 different endings as well to get.
Mm-hmm.
Two of which are joke endings, but
as long as the dog isn't there. I've only ever gone for one ending, but
the you get one of three endings depending on various actions you take in the game and how you actually treat Maria in the game as well. On your second playthrough, you're able to get both of the joke endings if you do the requirements to get those joke endings. The sixth ending you can only get after getting the first three endings. You have to play through the game 3 times, get those 3 endings, and then you can get the sixth ending after that.
Yeah.
So there is absolutely a lot of replay value, and
absolutely.
It's a fairly cheap game as well. I mean, it goes for less money in the UK than US. In the UK, you're looking at about £10 to £15 generally, and that's like complete box as well. In the US, usually around $30 to $40, though the Xbox version does seem to go for a fair bit less in the US.
Yeah, because I can tell you, I paid $8.98 for my Xbox copy.
Yeah.
So.
One other final thing I wanted to touch on as well with Silent Hill 2 is when it comes to the world, one thing I really liked was the other world, which I think is something that's, Silent Hill did, which is like a really good thing for a horror game, because you've already got this creepy town which is full of monsters, and then everything changes to this other world, and everything just becomes metal and blood, and it becomes like something truly from nightmares, and it goes from being like a creepy location to like a horrific, torturous location.
Yeah.
And it's something that, obviously they did in the original game as well, but I think Silent Hill 2 was the first of the games to, give it this true aesthetic and, make it something else.
Well, Silent Hill 1 did that to an extent.
Silent
Hill 2 definitely added more to it. And I mean, one of the standout moments to me in Silent Hill 2 is when the hospital changes to the other world, and basically you've been exploring all 3 floors of this hospital. Changes to the other world, you go in the lift, all of a sudden there's a 4th floor. That just it's subtle, but that creeped me out.
Yeah, it's a good game.
I like absolutely. Yeah,
it's not my favourite survival horror game, but it is up there.
Yeah, this is another one I'm definitely going to go back later and put more time into.
Yeah.
I will probably force myself through, and again, because it's only the UI that really bugs me with the game. The rest of it is quite fantastic.
Yeah.
I'll probably go through and muscle through a full playthrough, just get over my dislike of the controls and the menu system, too. I don't like the menu. But overall, I very much enjoy it, and I will probably also maybe even see multiple endings.
Well, even then, as Matt said, if it's not something that you can play and enjoy because of its, arcade control scheme, it's definitely worth watching a playthrough just to experience the story and just experience it more like a horror film rather than as a game, because it's still totally worth doing, even like that.
I will say, because of the horror, comment on the horror aspect, one thing I did thoroughly enjoy is the the way the boss, because you did have a couple boss battles in there, boss fights, if you will, where they didn't build up like, I was like, oh my god, there's going to be a boss fight, here comes the boss fight, enter a chamber with a boss, and, like when you fight the one monster in the elevator, and you're just blasting away at it with the shotgun. Yeah. It didn't really build up to like this massive, like when it's going to happen because you'll switch into the other dimension.
Yeah.
But it's not. You don't have like your classic boss build up.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, here's a bunch of health and here's a bunch of ammo and here's a hall and then there's a big room and we're gonna have a cutscene now and it just didn't do that. It just sort of suddenly happens and now you're there, and it really does add more tension to the scenario.
Because it could happen at any moment.
Yeah. Once they drop it on you the first time, you're sitting there, what's going to trigger the next event?
Yeah.
I did like that.
Yeah. So I think most people enjoyed that game as well. Controls were a bit, iffy, but more or less it's a good experience.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right. Well, let's have our final musical interlude and move on to our final game, which is Ryan's pick.
Game that I picked as my favorite and is definitely one of my favorite games of all time, not just retro titles, was Mega Man X. It was published by Capcom on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in 1993, tail end of 1993. And it was like the true sequel to the classic Mega Man series, versus just being more of the same gameplay. It really did fully upgrade the experience and change it while still retaining all the original mechanics and factors that made Mega Man a good series. And overall, I felt that the one of the reasons it's one of my favorite games is because it takes the brutal difficulty that was Mega Man and it tones it down a little bit while still making it a decent challenge. The game obviously went from 8-bit to 16 on the Super Nintendo, and it looked absolutely beautiful. The music, Capcom really throughout that entire generation was just so well known for good music, whether it be in their Disney rebuilds, their the Mega Man series, Mega Man X, Street Fighter. All these games had amazing music, and Mega Man X was no exception.
Oh yeah, the music is definitely one of the standouts.
It's such a fantastic game on all fronts, and it's not really confusing. You can take hard routes to the game, but you can't really take impossible routes. Well, actually, you can, but you're not likely to.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a right way to play the game. I mean, from my experience, I think that, if you know the weaknesses and you know the levels, you're definitely going to have a better time with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which I suppose the same with Perfect Dark, really, as we were saying with the objectives. But when I first played X, it was just after playing Mega Man 2. So the jump from that style to this style was a bit jarring at first because I didn't quite know how to play it because, you've got things like the dash and stuff, which I got the dash in the, not the first stage, but, one of the boss stages, Chill Penguins, was it?
Yeah.
And I just didn't use it until, maybe about, the 7th Maverick.
Oh, wow.
As soon as I figured out, how to use it, I was thinking, okay, I should have started using this earlier because it makes things a lot easier.
Yeah. You can actually use your dash and dash jumping off of walls or just getting a good dash start. You can blitz through past so many enemies.
Yeah, absolutely.
But for the bosses and stuff, it's so good for dodging attacks and everything. So it's, it's definitely one of the things you need to use. But yeah, it was weird because I started playing the game and I thought, yeah, it's decent. I had a few issues at first, I went through the first few stages and I got to, I think, Launch Octopus stage, and I found that level tough. And it had a couple of bosses in there as well that were just taking forever to beat, and I was just thinking, oh my goodness.
The little submarine mini boss that you have to fight 2 of.
Yeah, you've got to fight 2 of them, and
the first one's not so bad. The second one, you have spike traps and.
Well, I didn't think either of them were difficult to beat. It's just they had so much health, and it got to a point where it was like, I know how to beat this. It really shouldn't take this long. I've got the point of it. Just be done already.
Mega Man X does this weird thing where a lot of enemies, like Mavericks, will have hit stun. You hit them with an enemy, and they go into hit stun, and then they're immune for half a second. And any other shots that hit them don't do damage.
Yeah.
But all of your sub bosses don't have hit stun.
Yeah.
So like on these, a lot of your yeah, a lot of your mini bosses, it's just go into thumb breaking mode and mash shoot.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you can
like,
clear some of that in insane speeds as long as you can press the button fast enough.
well, that's the thing that I mean, I still found that they had a bit too much health for sub bosses. I didn't find them difficult, but I found that I had a much harder time with those than the Mavericks. Because the
Right.
Mavericks, if you got their weakness weapon, it's definitely a lot easier. But they don't take too long to beat if you've just got the X Buster. Which is the kind of good thing. You've got the X Buster and you can, take them down. But if you've got the weakness weapon, you can take them down faster or you can stop certain attacks. Like
Some of them
Launch
literally turn
Octopus.
into jokes.
Yeah, like in Launch Octopus, you can cut off all his arms and
Oh, so you did do that.
yeah, and it just means he's got like one attack.
You
And
can
I found those things really good. But
You
then
can-
I said like the sub bosses, I thought unless you've got their weakness weapon, it's just a bit too much.
which most of your sub bosses actually don't have weakness weapons.
It's just some of them.
I found they just have
Yeah.
weapons that just hit more times, like the Storm Eagle's gun shreds the power plant mini boss,
Yeah.
and also like the eel mini bosses in Launch Octopus's stage. You can kill them in one shot.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing as well, because as you were saying with the eel, you can kill them in one shot, and it just makes me think, okay, you can kill them in one shot, or you can kill them in a million shots.
Yeah.
There's no kind of middle ground, because it should be like a point where you've got a fair challenge, you've got to work out the pattern, but it doesn't take obnoxiously long. Whereas if you've got the weakness, you kill them in one hit, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, like and that's the same thing. If you ever want to go and put yourself up to a challenge, go and fight all of the Mavericks using only the
Yeah.
X Buster.
Yeah.
It's a pretty
Well-
solid fight that way, especially some of the easier ones like Armored Armadillo is a monster if you're using only the X Buster, because you get to see some of his other abilities, like he'll absorb energy and then he'll shoot little energy waves out.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's got his shell, which
Yeah, and
you can electrify him and make the shell drop off.
But if he retains the shell, he'll
Harder.
well he'll just bounce rounds off, and then he'll he'll shoot energy waves back as you charge it up with your shots,
Yeah.
and it makes the fight last forever. Spark Mandrill, you don't get to stop him in his tracks when you're just zapping him with the lemons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He actually gets up in your face, and he's really dangerous.
But,
So-
all in all, apart from some of the sub-bosses, particularly on Launch Octopus, I found the stages in general to be quite enjoyable once I went back to get all the upgrades, as were the Mavericks. And, yeah, I had a good time with it. And as you say, the music in particular is, really good.
I kind of like had a bit of an opposite experience. I mean, I can certainly see the appeal of hard platform games, but I think as I've like gotten older and my reflexes have kind of like dropped a little bit, this particular game kind of just wrecked me. I mean, Chill Penguin destroyed my hand for like a day. And coming off of Mega Man 2, which I found like quite a bit easier, I still wasn't able to fully complete it, but I got quite far. In Mega Man X, I was able to defeat like a couple of the bosses, I think. I went through all the levels quite fine, but the bosses just absolutely wrecked me. I know there are like patterns that you need to learn and stuff like that, but it's just pulling them off. Making my hand pull off those moves just wasn't happening for me at all.
Yeah.
And that is one of the that's actually one of the biggest differences between Mega Man and the Mega Man X series, is if you play them back to back, you play the games back to back, you'll see that in Mega Man, the stages tend to be what's really hard, and it's the bosses are not so punishing.
Yeah, I
Right.
agree with that.
But in Mega Man X, the stages are much more manageable, and then you're given an actual boss fight. And like I said, some of them, if you don't have their weakness, God help you.
Mm-hmm.
It only gets worse for the most part through the Mega Man X series, where the stages are solid, but if you aren't prepared for the boss with the right weapon, you're gonna have a fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the other interesting things going from the original series to the X series is that there are some things that they kept. Like, if you notice, the run speed of Mega Man in both series is exactly the same.
It is.
Like, it's the exact same pace. But with the enhanced power of the SNES, they were able to get rid of the scene transitions and only have that be for the bosses to kind of build the tension.
Yeah.
See, I had kind of a weird experience with Mega Man X because, this was really the first Mega Man game that I played, way back when. And then I played a lot of X4, and then much, much later I went back and played the originals. So, I'm normally someone who hates platforming games, but I'm actually pretty decent with the Mega Man X series just because, I enjoyed it so much and I've played them so much.
Right.
Well, that's the thing as well. What's everyone's experience with the Mega Man games? For me, I played a bit of Mega Man. Well, I played a lot of Mega Man 2. I beat it before playing X, and then I played X. And those were the first two Mega Man games I'd ever played.
Yeah, me too.
I touched it briefly before, but only played maybe for 10 minutes. So this is the first time I've really experienced the series.
I've played Mega Man X, X2, X3, X4, and X5. I have the Mega Man X collection on PS2, and then I've also got X7. And I've played Mega Man and Mega Man 2 because I also have that PS2 collection. But yeah, I hadn't played any of the originals until more recently. It was all the X series.
All right.
Probably because that was a little bit more concurrent with what we grew up. It was a much more recent game.
Yeah, I think that's the thing.
And the X series kept going as we were growing up with the PlayStation and PlayStation 2 and all that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Mega Man games, they were predominantly on the NES, weren't they? I think the first six on the NES. Even when the SNES was out, they were.
Yeah, you got 1 through 6 was the NES, and then you got 7 on the Super NES.
Yeah.
And then Genesis got the 1 through 3 Wily Wars.
Yeah.
And
then 8 was 32-bit, wasn't it?
And then 8 is when they abandoned Nintendo and hopped over to the PS1 and Saturn, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is what 8 was on.
And then after that, they didn't do any more until 9 and 10 on the... Was it the 360 era when those came out?
Yeah, because that came out on the Wii and the 360, I believe. You had the the hardcore retro style.
Yeah.
And I haven't played 9 and 10 for Mega Man, but I've heard that they're pretty brutal.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that they're really good, especially I think 9 was supposed to be better than 10.
So I wouldn't know.
I think that was one where they had. I think I've seen one, and there's a female robot master, where she's some kind of mermaid with a trident or something.
I know that there's one of those in the Mega Man Zero series.
Yeah.
But that's a different series that hopefully I can
Delve
get you all to sample at some point because it's absolutely fantastic.
Oh, I've done more than sample.
Okay, good. At least someone here knows.
I am a huge fan of Zero. Like, when I first played Mega Man X back then, I was like, oh, he's amazing. And then I got to play as him in X4, and it was like, oh, so good.
He is amazing, yeah. Why didn't they just make one series for him? And then they did, so.
Yeah.
So, but, yeah, no, Mega Man X has, Mega Man X sort of reestablished the Mega Man series because it was, I mentioned this briefly a minute ago, everybody's favorite Once Upon a Time animator on Newgrounds, Ego Raptor, has a series called Sequelitis, and he talks about Mega Man X and Mega Man. It's a very excellent episode that he does, but he just talks about the series and why they needed to do Mega Man X and how it revitalized the series as well. And now we have like 900 Mega Man games.
Yeah, there are
with a
quite
new
so
one coming
many
out this
games.
year.
Yeah.
There's so many games.
So going back to X briefly, what was everyone's favourite boss from it?
I would say Chill Penguin because it's the only boss I actually defeated. But I hated that boss also.
My favorite boss in the entire game actually might be, strangely, even though I have a weird love-hate relationship with, is the Robo Spider in Sigma's Tower.
Mm-hmm.
Or Sigma's Fortress. It's one of the level end
yeah.
bosses. And I've always hated it as a kid, and now for some reason I really like it.
See, I'm kind of torn because there are elements of each boss that I really like, or of some of the bosses I really like. Like, I love being able to use Boomer Quanger's weapon to just cut bosses up.
Right.
Like
with Flame Mammoth.
Yeah,
just lop his nose off.
Just cut his nose off. I like the design of Storm Eagle. I don't know. It's hard to. I honestly, I think, and it's kind of a weird answer, but I think one of my favorites is the fight with Vile, where you can actually beat him. Only because if you have the Hadouken, you can just one shot him, and it just feels so. It feels so good.
It's so satisfying because you literally couldn't hurt him when you started the game, and then you just face erase him.
Bam.
Yeah, for me, it's probably Boomer Kuwanga. I thought was a really good boss, but even though I think I also quite like Chill Penguin as well. It's an easy-ish fight, but I think it's quite a nice fight. I quite like the design of him as well. So I'd say one of those two, but yeah, I get what you're saying about Vile. That's a really good fight when you've got the Hadouken.
Otherwise, Vile's kind of an annoying fight if you don't.
Yeah.
I actually quite like the fight with Sigma's pet, the dog, when you've got the Hadouken. Because he's like, oh, you're not worthwhile. I'm going to set my dog on you. And then he jumps towards you and you Hadouken him and he's dead. And it's like, okay, right?
Yeah,
I
was going to say the Sigma fights I actually really enjoyed. I thought they were pretty well designed, especially for, the first instance of this boss that we see over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, I didn't like the Sigma fight in this one. I thought it was fine. Like, I liked his... Was it the second stage where he had a sword?
Yeah.
It was 3 stages. There was the first stage, which is the dog. The second stage where he has a sword, which I liked. And the third stage had his hands moving up and down and the moving platforms. And that stage I didn't like so much. Like, I found that one wasn't particularly difficult, but involved a lot of waiting around. If you messed up, you had to wait for the hands to come low again, and it just felt like a bit of a hassle.
If you're brave or impatient, you can actually dash and wall jump up between the hands and the walls and jump up on the hands.
Yes.
Yeah, and if you ever want to have a thumb breaker,
hit by hand.
Yeah, no, you have to wait. You have to time it so it's on the it's swooping on the inside because they kind of move in ovals.
Mm-hmm.
All right, okay.
If you ever want to do yourself a nice little thumb breaker challenge, is beat final stage Sigma without taking a hit.
Mm.
No thanks.
I've done it. It's super rough.
Yeah, I like the final Sigma. I like Sigma in X4 better, but I think this one was actually pretty good.
I think my favorite Sigma fight, of course, now we're kind of getting off topic, but was actually the final stage in X3. It was like Kaiser Sigma or whatever.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
He has the big mech suit that just showers missiles.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird because I played X2 recently, and the Sigma fight in that is just kind of weird because it's quite easy, and the second stage is just like this holographic head that doesn't even have a health bar; it just changes color.
Mm-hmm. Goes from green to like super deep red.
Yeah. It's a bit of a weird one, but yeah. Anyway, Mega Man X, I thought it was pretty good. I had some kind of issues with various different elements of it, mainly the sub-bosses, and, as I say, I wasn't too keen on the final Sigma fight. But other than that, I had a good time.
What price does the cart tend to go for these days?
The right around these times, genuine copies are going to run you around $25 to $35 for just the cart. You have to keep your eyes out for repros. It's a very coveted game, even though it's not that expensive. But the market is just littered with reproduction cartridges, which are iffy
Yeah.
on their playability.
I would say, honestly, your best bet if you want to play this game is to pick up the X collection. Because
I think that goes for a reasonable price. That's
last I looked, of course, it was a couple years, the Mega Man X collection was very expensive, at least on GameCube.
I mean, I'm seeing PS2, $14.03 on Amazon.
Oh, that's a lot better. It's like $50, $60 on GameCube, but on the PlayStation, no, it's only like $15, $20.
Yeah. $41.01 on GameCube, so yeah.
Yeah. So a bit more expensive on GameCube, but not too bad.
If you got yourself a PS2, definitely pick it up. That, or if you have yourself if you have a Wii or a Wii U, and probably eventually a Switch, I'm sure whenever they get that market going.
Yeah.
I'll stick it on there.
It's on the SNES Mini as well. That's what I played on.
Yes.
If you have a SNES Mini, which are actually still available in a lot of places. Like I have the Target here, the Super Target. They always have like 2 or 3 in stock. So it's easy to come by. There are definitely plenty of ways to come by it.
Yeah. Out of interest, with the Mega Man X collection, what does that actually include? Does it include everything until X7 or 8 or whatever it is?
I think it's just 1 through 6, isn't it?
Yeah, it's X through 6, and then it's got an extra unlockable game in it that I don't remember off the top of my head.
So how many X games are there? Am I right in thinking there are 8 of
Well,
them?
there's definitely 1 through 8, and then there was the Mega Man X Command Mission RPG spin-off, which I own and is quite decent for a JRPG.
Yeah, I've got that one too. I just haven't gotten around to playing it.
It gets some of those bosses get brutal difficult, but that's a JRPG. You just grind it out and then stomp them.
With the main X versions, am I right in thinking that the first 5 are good, and then after they're a bit okay or iffy?
From what I understand, 7 is abysmal because they tried to do too much, but 8 apparently went back to
the old style,
back to formula, so it was better.
It looks like the extra game on the X collection is Mega Man Kart Racing.
Ah, okay.
Oh, nice.
I didn't know that was a thing. It is a Mega Man Kart Racer.
I'm gonna have to check that out. I like kart races.
It's called Mega Man Battle and Chase, and it did have its own release.
Just not here, the U.S.
Doesn't look like it had a European release though. So
yeah.
Well, whenever we come to doing kart races, I think someone should probably stick that on there. I could be interested.
I've never played this before, but we're all going to do it now.
Yeah. I mean, we can just play that independently.
It sounds like quite an interesting premise. To be fair, it could work quite well because you've got all the different weapon power-ups.
You do. It's
from Mega Man. For it. So exactly, you could use those as your weapons to use. It could work well. It could be good.
But I'm glad that everybody seemed to at least somewhat enjoy Mega Man X. I mean, maybe I have it has a special place in my heart because I grew up with it.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, I certainly enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's it's been one of my favorites for quite a while.
Good.
I definitely see the appeal of it as well, even if it isn't for me.
Yeah.
That's fair.
And I think, we're finding that a lot is, the games we picked, they're all well-beloved games, and they're that way for a reason. Like, you can clearly see what made each of these games good.
Yeah. Well, I think we should have, a quick break, and then we'll do a roundup, and we'll each pick a favourite. Okay, so that was the end of our first collection of games. So we had Perfect Dark on the N64. We had Silent Hill 2 for the Xbox and the PS2. Mega Man X for the SNES, and we had A Link to the Past, which was also on the SNES.
Yep.
So now it's time to pick a favourite. Obviously, our own picks are out of the runnings because it would make it a little bit too obvious, I suppose, because my mind certainly hasn't changed. So what's everyone's favourite pick from the other three?
Easily, I think my choice is going to be Perfect Dark. I've always had a soft spot for the arcade shooters and rare shooters, so that really hit home and was a nice, refreshing thing. Because I always wanted to play it, and now I got to, and it was totally worth it.
Yeah.
Very much enjoyed myself.
Okay, well, it's a damn good game, so I'm glad you enjoyed it. By the other two.
As much as I want to say A Link to the Past, because it is an absolute classic and I love it a lot, purely because it surprised me, I would have to also say Perfect Dark. It just engrossed me, and I spent several days playing through it, and I loved pretty much every minute of it.
Yeah.
Well, I actually think I'm going to break the pattern here. I'm going to go with Mega Man X, just because it's. I mean, and I don't know if that's technically cheating because I've got so much history with this game already, but it just of the things on offer, I think that's definitely the one that I enjoyed the most.
Well, I think I'm going to side with you as well and also go for Mega Man X. Even though I had various issues with the game, I certainly appreciate quite a lot for being, well, an excellent game and also introducing me to the series. I enjoyed Mega Man 2 when I played it beforehand, but I think it was getting through Mega Man X where I really appreciate the Mega Man series. And after I beat it, I picked up Mega Man X3 and X4 and Mega Man 8 for the Saturn. So I'm looking forward to delving into those soon. But yeah, my pick is going to be Mega Man X just because it introduced me to, a series that, I'm starting to, really get into.
No, you're in for a treat, at least up until X4.
Well, yeah. After that, I don't know what I'm going to play. Maybe I'll get around to playing X5 and then I'll leave it after that. And then play some of the other games, like maybe Mega Man Legends and stuff. I've got an N64, so I might pick that up. Okay.
It's worth it.
So I think we're kind of split between Perfect Dark and Mega Man X, but I think we can all agree that all four games are definitely worth picking up.
Oh, yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
They're all quite good.
I think they're all classics, and they're classics for a reason. So that concludes our first episode of Retro Odyssey. I think we had 4 classic games there. So that's it until next time. Our next topic will be retro beat-em-ups, a genre that's quite close to my heart, even though it's one that's been a little stagnant as of late. So I think we'll all look forward to that the next time. So from the 4 of us, all that's left is to wish you goodbye and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.